The cafe fell silent the moment the Mafia boss walked in. No one dared breathe near him. Not the waiters, not the customers, not even the manager trembling behind the counter. He sat alone at a corner table, hands folded. A storm of a man whose name alone could shut down half the city. That's why everyone froze when a tiny voice broke through the quiet. Sir? Can I sit here?" The boss looked up, annoyed at first, then stunned. A little girl stood beside his table, balancing awkwardly on one leg. Her crutches snow-dusted from outside. Her coat was too thin, her smile too brave, her eyes too tired for someone so small. "This seat is taken," he started to say. The automatic response, the one that kept strangers away. But the girl didn't move, didn't step back. She only hugged her backpack tighter and whispered, "I just don't want to sit alone today." Something flickered in the boss's eyes. A memory, a scar deep enough to silence him mid-breath. Across the cafe, two men watched her. The same men who'd followed her in. The same men she had been trying to hide from. That's when he understood. She hadn't chosen his table for company. She'd chosen it for protection. Slowly, the girl lifted her pant leg, revealing a prosthetic he instantly recognized. A model given only to children treated at a very specific underground clinic. A clinic funded quietly by him. His chest tightened. His world shifted. And his answer changed everything. "Sit," he said softly. "You're safe now. Stay with me until the end. Because what this little girl reveals next will shatter the Mafia boss's past and his future. In one breath." Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get started. Vincent Torino had built an empire on fear. For 37 years, his name commanded respect from Brooklyn to Manhattan. Men twice his size stepped aside when he walked. Business deals closed with his nod. Problems disappeared with his silence. But sitting across from this 8-year-old girl with dirt-stained cheeks and hopeful eyes, Vincent felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Vulnerability. "What's your name, little one?" he asked. His voice softer than anyone in that cafe had ever heard it. "Sophie," she whispered, carefully settling into the chair across from him. Her crutches clattered slightly as she propped them against the table. Sophie Martinez. The name hit Vincent like a punch to the gut. Martinez. He knew that name. He knew it because 3 months ago, he'd received a desperate letter from a Maria Martinez, a single mother begging for help with her daughter's medical bills. The letter had been buried under dozens of others, requests for money that usually ended up in the trash. But this one he'd kept. "How old are you, Sophie?" Vincent's weathered hands remained perfectly still on the table, but his mind raced. 8 and 3/4, she said, with the precision only children possessed about their age. "My birthday is in February. I'll be 9. Vincent nodded slowly, watching as Sophie pulled a worn notebook from her backpack. The cover was decorated with hand-drawn stars and hearts, clearly her own artwork. She opened it carefully, as if it contained the most precious secrets in the world. "I write stories," she explained, noticing his curious gaze. "Mama says I have a gift for making things up." "What kind of stories?" Vincent found himself genuinely interested, something that surprised him more than anything else that had happened in the last 5 minutes. Happy ones mostly. Stories where everyone gets what they need, even if they don't get what they want. Sophie's voice carried a wisdom that seemed impossible for her age. "Do you like stories, sir?" Vincent almost smiled. "Almost. I prefer real life. It's more predictable." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong," Sophie said, her eyes lighting up with the enthusiasm of a child sharing her favorite subject. "Real life is the most unpredictable story of all. Like right now. I bet you never thought you'd be having tea with a kid today." She was right. This morning, Vincent had planned to review territory disputes and settle a problem with some competing families moving in on his businesses. Instead, he was sitting in a tiny cafe, captivated by an 8-year-old philosopher with one leg and an imagination bigger than the city itself. "I don't drink tea," Vincent said quietly. then coffee, or hot chocolate. The point is, Sophie leaned forward conspiratorially, you never know what's going to happen next in your story. The waitress approached their table, trembling slightly. Vincent noticed how the young woman's hands shook as she held her order pad. In any other circumstance, he might have been annoyed by the interruption. Today, he felt something different, protective. What can I get you both? The waitress managed to stammer. Hot chocolate for the lady, Vincent said, gesturing to Sophie. Extra whipped cream, and coffee for me. Black. Sophie beamed at being called a lady. Thank you, sir. You're very kind. Kind. When was the last time anyone had called Vincent Torino kind? When was the last time anyone had seen him as anything other than dangerous? As the waitress hurried away, Vincent noticed the two men near the door again. They were trying to look casual, reading newspapers and checking their phones, but their eyes kept darting to Sophie. Vincent's instincts, honed by decades of survival, told him everything he needed to know. Sophie, he said carefully, those men by the door, do you know them? Sophie's face immediately changed. The joy drained from her expression, replaced by fear so raw it made Vincent's chest tighten. They work for Mr. Chen, she whispered. Vincent knew exactly who Mr. Chen was, a loan shark who operated in the shadier parts of the city, preying on desperate families with nowhere else to turn, the kind of man who gave criminals a bad name. What does your mother owe him? Vincent asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Mama borrowed money for my surgery, the one where I got my new leg. Sophie touched her prosthetic unconsciously. She promised to pay him back, but then she got sick and couldn't work for 2 months. Now he wants extra money because we're late. Vincent's jaw clenched. He'd seen this pattern countless times. Desperate families, impossible interest rates, and collectors who had no problem threatening children to get their money. How much extra money? He asked. Sophie pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket. $20,000. Mr. Chen says if Mama doesn't pay by Friday, something bad will happen to me. Vincent stared at the paper, his mind calculating rapidly. $20,000. To him, that was pocket money. To Maria Martinez and her 8-year-old daughter, it might as well have been 20 million. That's why you came here today, Vincent realized. You were running from them. Sophie nodded, tears beginning to gather in her eyes. I saw them following me from school. I got scared and ran. I just picked the first place I saw that looked safe. Safe. She'd chosen his table because she felt safe with him, a man whose reputation was built on being anything but safe. The waitress returned with their drinks, setting them down with hands that had stopped shaking quite so violently. Vincent noticed how she smiled at Sophie, how her entire demeanor softened around the child. Enjoy, the waitress said, and for the first time since Vincent had entered the cafe, someone had spoken to him without fear. Sophie wrapped her small hands around the mug of hot chocolate, inhaling the steam with obvious pleasure. This smells like happiness, she announced. What does happiness smell like? Vincent asked, surprising himself again with his genuine curiosity. Warm and sweet and safe, Sophie said without hesitation. Like when Mama makes breakfast on Sunday mornings before she goes to her second job. Vincent felt something crack inside his chest. This child, who had every reason to be bitter about her circumstances, still found joy in simple moments, still believed in happiness that smelled like hot chocolate and Sunday morning breakfasts. Sophie, Vincent said slowly, choosing his words carefully. What if I told you that you don't have to worry about Mr. Chen anymore? Sophie looked up at him with eyes that held too much hope for someone so young. Are you like a superhero or something? Vincent almost laughed. If only she knew how far from a hero he really was. But as he looked into those trusting eyes, as he watched her sip her hot chocolate with the pure contentment of a child who'd found a moment of peace in her chaotic world, Vincent made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Their lives forever. I know someone who can help people like Mr. Chen go away forever, Vincent said quietly, his eyes never leaving Sophie's face. But first I need to know something. Your mother's letter, the one she sent 3 months ago asking for help with your surgery. Do you remember writing the envelope? Sophie's eyes widened with surprise. How did you know about that? Mama said she wrote to lots of people, but nobody ever wrote back. Vincent reached into his jacket pocket, moving slowly so as not to startle her. He pulled out a worn envelope, the edges soft from being handled repeatedly. Sophie's childish handwriting was still visible on the front, complete with a small heart drawn next to the address. You drew this heart, Vincent said, pointing to the tiny symbol. I remember because I kept this letter on my desk for weeks. I couldn't throw it away. Sophie stared at the envelope, then back at Vincent, her young mind trying to process this impossible coincidence. You're the Vincent Torino from the letter? The one Mama said helps people sometimes? Vincent nodded slowly. For 37 years, he'd built walls between himself and the world. But this child had somehow found every crack, every weakness in his armor, without even trying. But you didn't answer, Sophie said softly, confusion replacing the initial wonder. Mama cried when no one wrote back. She thought maybe her handwriting was too messy, or maybe she didn't ask politely enough. The words hit Vincent harder than any rival's threats ever had. He'd received thousands of letters over the years. Requests for help, for money, for protection. Most went straight to his lieutenants to handle or dismiss. But Maria Martinez's letter had been different. It wasn't demanding or entitled. It was simply a mother's desperate plea, written with the kind of vulnerability that Vincent had forgotten existed. I kept your mother's letter because it reminded me of something I thought I'd lost forever, Vincent said, his voice barely above a whisper. Hope. Sophie tilted her head, studying his face with the intensity only children possessed. What happened to your hope, Mr. Vincent? The question was so innocent, so direct, that Vincent felt 37 years of carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. How could he explain to an 8-year-old that hope died the day his own daughter had been killed in the crossfire of a war he'd started? How could he tell her that for 12 years, he'd lived with the knowledge that his choices had cost him the only pure thing in his life? Sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt the people they love most, Vincent said carefully. And sometimes those mistakes are so big that they change everything. Sophie nodded with the solemn understanding of a child who'd faced her own share of impossible circumstances. Like when my daddy left after my accident. Mama said it was because some people can't handle when things get hard. Vincent's chest tightened. Here was this remarkable child, abandoned by her father when she needed him most, still finding ways to smile, still believing in kindness from strangers. The two men by the door were growing restless. Vincent watched them exchange glances, then check their watches. Chen's men were clearly operating on some kind of timeline, and Sophie was running out of time. Sophie, Vincent said urgently, I need you to listen to me very carefully. In about 2 minutes, I'm going to stand up and walk over to those men. When I do, I want you to stay exactly where you are. Keep drinking your hot chocolate, and don't look over there no matter what you hear. Can you do that for me? Sophie's eyes went wide with fear. Are you going to hurt them? Vincent paused, considering his words carefully. This child had already seen too much darkness in her young life. I'm going to have a conversation with them. A very clear conversation about why they should never bother you or your mother again. Will they listen? Sophie asked, her voice small. Vincent's expression darkened in a way that reminded everyone in the cafe exactly who they were dealing with. They'll listen. But before Vincent could stand, Sophie reached across the table and grabbed his hand with both of hers. Her small fingers were warm from the hot chocolate mug, and Vincent was struck by how fragile she felt. How easily the world could break someone so small. Mr. Vincent, Sophie said seriously, I need to tell you something first. Something I've never told anyone. Not even Mama. Vincent sat back down, giving Sophie his full attention. Something in her tone had shifted, carrying a weight that seemed impossible for an 8-year-old to bear. The day of my accident, Sophie began, her voice steady but quiet. "I wasn't supposed to be at the construction site. I was supposed to be at school. But I saw something, and I followed it." Vincent felt ice form in his stomach. Construction sites in his territory weren't just construction sites. They were often covers for other activities, other businesses that required privacy and discretion. "What did you see, Sophie?" Vincent asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. Sophie looked around the cafe, then leaned closer to Vincent, lowering her voice to barely a whisper. "I saw men burying something big, something wrapped in plastic. They were arguing about it, saying someone was going to be very angry if they found out." Vincent's blood turned cold. 3 months ago, right around the time of Sophie's accident, there had been a problem with one of his competitors. A problem that had required a permanent solution. A solution that should have been handled discreetly at a site that should have been completely secure. "Sophie," Vincent said carefully, "did any of these men see you watching?" Sophie nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "One of them looked right at me. He had a scar on his face, right here." She traced a line from her left eye to the corner of her mouth. "He started running toward me, and I got scared and ran. That's when I fell through the floor." Vincent's mind raced. Scarface Tony, one of his most ruthless enforcers, a man known for his complete lack of conscience. If Tony had seen Sophie at that burial site, if he'd realized she was a witness to what happened there. "The accident wasn't an accident, was it?" Vincent said, the pieces falling into place with horrifying clarity. Sophie shook her head slowly. "I think the man with the scar broke the wooden boards on purpose. I heard him laughing as I fell." Vincent felt rage building in his chest, like nothing he'd experienced since his daughter's death. This innocent child hadn't just lost her leg in a random accident. She'd been deliberately maimed by one of his own men to cover up a crime. And then, when that hadn't been enough to silence her permanently, they'd sent Chen's men to finish what Tony had started. "Sophie," Vincent said, his voice controlled but deadly, "has anyone else asked you about what you saw that day? Mr. Chen asked me lots of questions when he first came to our apartment. He wanted to know if I remembered anything about my accident, if I'd told anyone about seeing things I shouldn't have seen." Sophie's voice trembled. "When I said I didn't remember anything, he said that was good. He said little girls who remembered too much sometimes had more accidents." Vincent stood slowly, his entire body radiating the kind of controlled fury that had made him legend in the underground world. But before he could take a step toward Chen's men, Sophie grabbed his hand again. "There's more," she whispered urgently. "The thing they buried. I saw what it was before they covered it up." Vincent sat back down, his heart pounding. "What was it, Sophie?" Sophie looked around the cafe once more, then met Vincent's eyes with a directness that was both heartbreaking and terrifying in its intensity. "It was a little girl," Sophie said quietly. "A little girl about my age with dark hair and a pink dress. And Mr. Vincent, she looked just like the picture you keep in your wallet." Vincent's world stopped. The cafe, the sounds, the people, everything faded into absolute silence as Sophie's words hit him with the force of a freight train. His daughter, Isabella, the pink dress she'd worn the day she disappeared, the dark hair that had always reminded him of his late wife, the case that had gone cold despite every resource he'd thrown at it, every favor he'd called in, every threat he'd made. Vincent's hands began to shake as 12 years of grief, rage, and unanswered questions crashed down on him all at once. At once. Vincent's wallet fell from his trembling hands, scattering photographs across the cafe table. Sophie reached for one of them, her small fingers tracing the image of a little girl in a pink dress, a girl who could have been her twin. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Vincent," Sophie whispered, watching as tears the Mafia boss hadn't shed in 12 years finally broke free. "I didn't know she was your little girl until I saw her picture just now." Vincent couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. For 12 years, he'd lived with the torture of not knowing what happened to Isabella. He'd torn the city apart looking for her, had destroyed rival families, had made deals with devils and angels alike, all for even the smallest clue about his daughter's fate. And here sat this brave little girl, this 8-year-old witness who'd been carrying the truth about his greatest loss while fighting battles of her own. "Where exactly did you see this happen?" Vincent finally managed, his voice barely recognizable. "The old warehouse on Pier 47, the one with the broken windows and the red brick." Sophie's voice was steady, but Vincent could see the weight of this secret in her young eyes. "They dug the hole near the back corner, by the rusty fence. Pier 47. Vincent's mind raced. That warehouse had belonged to the Castellano family 3 months ago, before Vincent had systematically dismantled their operation piece by piece. He'd thought he was eliminating competition. He'd had no idea he was destroying the very people responsible for his daughter's death. "Sophie," Vincent said carefully, "the man with the scar who saw you. Did he say anything? Did he mention any names?" Sophie nodded slowly. "He was angry at the other men. He kept saying someone named Castellano would have their heads if anyone found out about the girl. He said they should have disposed of her somewhere else, somewhere that couldn't be traced back to their family." Vincent felt something cold and deadly settle in his chest. The Castellanos. He'd already destroyed most of their operation, but he'd been merciful in his approach, content to simply drive them out of the city. Now he understood that mercy had been a mistake. They'd taken his daughter's life, and then they'd tried to take Sophie's to cover their tracks. "There's something else," Sophie continued, her voice growing smaller. "Before I fell, I heard one of the men on the phone. He was talking to someone, telling them the job was done, but they had a witness problem now. The person on the other end must have given him instructions because he laughed and said, 'Don't worry, boss. One little crippled girl won't be telling anyone anything soon.'" The word crippled sent rage coursing through Vincent's veins like fire. They deliberately maimed this innocent child, had stolen her leg and nearly her life, all to cover up their murder of his daughter. Vincent looked toward the 2 men by the door, then back at Sophie. Everything was connected. Chen wasn't just a loan shark collecting debts. He was cleanup crew, sent to eliminate the one witness who could connect the Castellanos to Isabella's murder. "Sophie, I need you to promise me something," Vincent said, reaching across the table to take her small hand in his. "Promise me you'll never blame yourself for what happened to Isabella. You were just a little girl who saw something terrible, and you've carried this burden alone for far too long." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "But if I'd been braver, if I'd told someone sooner, maybe you could have found her before." "No," Vincent interrupted firmly. "You were 8 years old, terrified, and fighting for your own life. The fact that you survived, the fact that you're here today to tell me the truth, that's not coincidence. That's courage." Vincent stood slowly, his decision crystallizing with perfect clarity. For 12 years, he'd been consumed by grief and rage with no direction, no target for the justice his daughter deserved. Now he had names, locations, and a witness who'd already paid too high a price for simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Mr. Vincent," Sophie called softly as he prepared to approach Chen's men. "What's going to happen to me and Mama now?" Vincent paused, looking down at this remarkable child who'd lost her father, her leg, and her sense of safety, yet still worried about others before herself. In her face, he saw echoes of his own daughter, the same determination, the same spirit that couldn't be broken by the world's cruelty. "You and your mother are under my protection now," Vincent said with absolute certainty. "No one will ever threaten you again. Your mother's debt is gone. Your medical bills are taken care of, and you'll both have everything you need for as long as you need it." Sophie's face lit up with a hope so pure, it nearly broke Vincent's heart. "Really? We don't have to be scared anymore?" "Never again," Vincent promised. "But right now, I need you to stay here, finish your hot chocolate, and don't look toward the door for the next few minutes." Vincent walked toward Chen's men with the measured pace of a predator who'd finally found his prey. Every step carried 12 years of accumulated rage. Every movement promised justice for both his daughter and the brave little girl who'd risked everything to give him the truth. The two men looked up as Vincent approached, their expressions shifting from casual surveillance to sudden alarm as they recognized exactly who was walking toward them. Vincent had seen that look countless times before. The moment when men realized they'd made a fatal miscalculation. "Gentlemen," Vincent said quietly, his voice carrying the kind of calm that preceded storms. "I believe you've been looking for someone who belongs to me now." The larger of the two men started to reach inside his jacket, but Vincent's hand shot out faster than thought, clamping down on the man's wrist with enough force to crack bone. "I wouldn't," Vincent whispered, leaning close enough that only the two men could hear him. "Not unless you want to join your employer in whatever hole he's hiding in." The second man tried to stand, but Vincent's free hand pressed down on his shoulder, keeping him seated with pressure that promised worse things if he moved again. "Here's what's going to happen," Vincent continued, his voice never rising above a conversational tone. "You're going to call Chen. You're going to tell him that Sophie Martinez is no longer available for collection. You're going to tell him that her family is under the protection of Vincent Torino, and any further contact will be considered a declaration of war." The men exchanged terrified glances. Everyone in their line of work knew Vincent's reputation, knew that when he made promises, he kept them, whether they were promises of protection or promises of destruction. "And then," Vincent continued, "you're going to give me every detail you have about your arrangement with Chen, including who hired him to target the Martinez family and why. You're going to tell me everything you know about the Castellano family's current whereabouts, and you're going to do it right now." The smaller man found his voice first. "Mr. Torino, we're just collectors. We don't know nothing about no Castellanos." Vincent's grip tightened on the larger man's wrist, and the sound of bones grinding together was audible even over the cafe's background noise. "Try again." Okay, the man gasped. "Chen got a call 3 days ago. Someone paid him 50 grand to make the Martinez problem disappear permanent-like. Said the kid saw something she shouldn't have, and it was time to clean up loose ends." "Who made the call?" Vincent demanded. "We don't know names," the smaller man said quickly, but the voice had an accent. Italian, old-school Italian, like from the neighborhoods. Vincent's jaw clenched. The Castellanos were third-generation Italian-American, but the old man, Salvatore Castellano, still spoke with traces of his grandfather's Sicilian accent. "Where are they now?" Vincent asked. "Last we heard, they were holed up in a safe house in Queens. Some warehouse operation they're running out of an old textile factory." The man with the broken wrist was turning pale, sweat beading on his forehead. "Please, Mr. Torino, we just take orders. We don't ask questions." Vincent released both men simultaneously, watching as they struggled not to show their relief. "Here's your new orders. You walk out of this cafe, you disappear from this city, and you never mention Sophie Martinez's name again. If I see either of you within 50 miles of her or her mother, if I hear even a whisper that you've spoken about what happened here today, I will find you." The men nodded rapidly, already gathering their things with shaking hands. "And gentlemen," Vincent added as they prepared to leave, "when you call Chen to give him the news, make sure he understands that this message comes with a guarantee. If anything happens to Sophie or Maria Martinez, if they have so much as a bad day that can be traced back to him, I will hold him personally responsible." The men practically ran from the cafe, leaving Vincent standing alone near the door. Around him, the other patrons pretended they hadn't witnessed anything, suddenly very interested in their newspapers and coffee cups. Vincent returned to Sophie's table where she sat exactly as he'd left her, hands wrapped around her hot chocolate mug, eyes carefully focused anywhere but the door. "Are they gone?" Sophie asked quietly. "They're gone," Vincent confirmed, settling back into his chair. "And they won't be coming back." Sophie looked up at him with eyes that held wisdom far beyond her 8 years. "Thank you, Mr. Vincent, for protecting me and for believing me about what I saw." Vincent studied this remarkable child, this brave little girl who'd survived attempted murder, lived with a terrible secret, and still found ways to trust strangers with kindness. In her, he saw not just echoes of his lost daughter, but something more. He saw the possibility of healing, of purpose, of a reason to use his power for something other than revenge. "Sophie," Vincent said slowly, "I want to ask you something important. How would you feel about having a big family? People who would always look out for you and your mother?" Sophie tilted her head curiously. "What kind of family?" "The kind that makes sure you never have to be afraid again. The kind that helps you and your mother build the life you deserve." Vincent paused, choosing his words carefully. "I can't bring back your father, and I can't give you back your leg, but I can give you something else. Security, opportunity, and people who care about what happens to you." Sophie was quiet for a long moment, processing this offer with the seriousness it deserved. Would Mama be okay with it? She doesn't like taking charity. "This isn't charity," Vincent said firmly. "This is family taking care of family. And Sophie, after what you've done for me today, after helping me find the truth about Isabella, you're family now, whether you want to be or not." Sophie smiled then, the first truly carefree smile Vincent had seen from her since she'd sat down at his table. "I think I'd like that. Having a big family sounds nice." Vincent felt something shift inside his chest, a warmth he hadn't experienced in 12 years. This child had given him more than information about his daughter's death. She'd given him a reason to live for something other than revenge. "Then it's settled," Vincent said, raising his coffee cup in a small toast. "To family." Sophie giggled and raised her hot chocolate mug. "To family." As they drank, Vincent's mind was already working, already planning. The Castellanos would face justice for what they'd done to Isabella, but that was no longer his only priority. He had a new daughter to protect now, a woman who needed help rebuilding her life, and a future that suddenly held possibilities he'd thought were gone forever. The broken little girl who'd asked to share his table had done more than find safety. She'd found the one man in the city who had the power to give her everything she'd lost, and the heart to want to do it. And Vincent Torino, the most feared man in the city, had found something he'd thought he'd never have again: hope. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen in the quietest places. A simple question from a brave little girl transformed a man built on fear into someone capable of love again. Sophie Martinez didn't just find protection that day, she found a father. And Vincent Torino didn't just solve the mystery of his daughter's death. He discovered that healing comes not from revenge, but from choosing to protect the innocent. What started as a chance encounter between a terrified child and a dangerous man became something neither expected. Family, real family, built not on blood, but on choice, courage, and the simple act of making room at your table for someone who needs it most. The cafe that witnessed their first meeting would see many more Saturday mornings together. Vincent teaching Sophie about business and life, Sophie teaching Vincent about hope and second chances. Maria Martinez finally able to breathe freely, watching her daughter laugh without fear. Because sometimes, when you think your story is over, when you believe the best parts of your life are buried in the past, a small voice asks if they can sit with you, and everything changes.